Showtime.
Wow. Well, without any question, this is the greatest night and highest achievement any songwriter could wish for. It's truly an honor to join my songwriting heroes, a lot of them being good friends and colleagues over the years. We all have our journey and what it took to get here, and mine, I suppose, was a bit odd. I was that kid that musicalized in my head with an imaginary orchestra. Every drama, every experience, from striking out as a little leaguer, which I did quite often, to a snowball fight with friends, to the anticipation of asking a girl out. You don't want to hear that music.
Welcome, everyone, to the Rosie and Bill Show. Our guest this week is a Hall of Fame songwriter. He's written over 20 top 10 hits for pop and country artists all around the world. From Barbra Streisand to Whitney Houston, Garth Brooks, George Strait, the list goes on and on.
His book, I Wrote That One Too, chronicles 4 decades in the music industry. And he's here tonight to share his story with us. Please welcome to the Rosie and Bill Show, the man behind the music, Steve Dorff. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
It's definitely a pleasure, Steve. And, you know, it's when we started preparing for this interview, which we were so glad to be able to have you here, Rosie and I at one point said, oh my gosh, where do we begin? What an incredible career. So I thought maybe what might make it easy is if we kind of start at the beginning. So could you just share with us and our viewers what it was that got you into the music business and what it was like when you wrote that very first song?
Wow. That's kind of a long story. My mother tells me that I hit the crib singing. So I think, well, I know that music was always in my head. I would bang my head in to a rhythm that was going on, or melodies that were going on in my head. And my parents, I think, thought I was having epileptic. But yeah, I was a kind of a strange kid. I had this imaginary orchestra in my head, and whatever I was doing, whether it was having a snowball fight with friends or watching someone round the bases after hitting a home run in a little league game, I would be musicalizing it and just assuming that everybody did that. Because I would ask my mother, I'd say, how did you hear that? And she'd look at me like I was crazy. So it eventually, I started writing melodies on the piano when I was very young, 4, 5, 6 years old. I'd crawl up on the piano bench and start playing things that I was hearing. And then eventually started writing songs when I was a teenager, because when the Beatles hit, I wanted to be in a band. And so I started writing songs for my band. And I got a couple of friends together and we started a little band, and I started writing the songs. They were terrible songs. And, but that was the beginning. That was the beginning.
Wow, so many questions are coming to mind as you're talking about that. So even as a young man and a young boy, you had these melodies in your head. Was there anything that would trigger the inspiration, or was just life around you?
Life around me. Whether I remember distinctly getting into my mother's car, sitting in the back seat. It was raining. The windshield wipers were I must have been 5 or 6 years old, windshield wipers going, and all of a sudden I start hearing this symphony going on in my head, you know, to the windshield wipers. If I was walking to school and the leaves were blowing and noises, street noises, those would become a piece of music to me. So, so I was really underscoring musically everything that was always around me.
Well, I want to be a little more specific now with this question, because first of all, that's fascinating to me, because that is a very specialized talent that you're talking about, to underscore things like that. When you wrote a hit song, like say, for instance, Through the Years, I can remember at my sister's wedding, my brother-in-law and his mother dancing to that song. It's an incredible song. I mean, thank you for all the music you've given us, first of all. But when you have a song like that, how did that come to you?
You know, all these songs have great stories behind them, and that's the truth. They're like children. They all have their own little lives, and they all have their own little journeys to becoming either successful or never being heard. I liken a songwriter's catalog to an iceberg. When you see an iceberg, you're only seeing 15% of it above water. Nobody gets to see the other 85%, and that's true of my music catalog. If I get 15 or 20% of what I've written recorded and out there commercially, that's like batting 400 or 500 in for a baseball player. It's pretty hard to do. And Through the Years was a song that has a great story behind it. I actually wrote that song in 12 minutes. And the reason I know it was 12 minutes is because when Marty Panzer came over and handed me the lyric, because he had the lyric all finished, and he took it out of a brown envelope and handed it to me, as Marty and I did. He would write the lyric first. And as I was reading it, I was hearing the tune. And I yelled into my wife at the time, she's not my wife anymore, how long before dinner? Because we'd invited Marty over for dinner. And she said, oh, about 15 minutes. So I grabbed Marty and we went in the back room and I sat at the piano and we wrote the song in 12 minutes.
Wow.
You know what's interesting, Steve? One of the questions that I was thinking of asking you was, what is the fastest time in which you've ever written a song? Is that it? Through the Years?
No, I think I wrote the theme to Growing Pains in about 5 minutes. Perfectly honest. I never let the producers know that. I told them I lived over that all night long. But
well, we'll keep this just between us.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter anymore because that show's off the air. You know, and I never thought that, you know, that's another great story. I mean, I went to see the pilot of this TV show called Growing Pains, and I thought it was the worst 22 minutes of TV I'd ever seen. And I actually called my agent on the way home from watching it and said, can you kind of get me off this? They want me to write a song and it's never going to go. And, you know, and she said, no, just do something, just throw something together. And chances are the show, you know, the pilot will never be picked up anyway. So I went home and knocked this thing out. I was actually going to start writing something that I had started that I really wanted to finish, that also never turned into anything. And before I started that, John Bettis, my lyricist, was over at the house and I said, hey, can you write a quick lyric to this 30-second theme song I've got to write? Let's get it out of the way so I can be done with it. And we wrote it in about, I don't know, 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Did you give him the whole synopsis of the show?
I gave him like a 25-word or less thing. It's a family. It's, you know, kids are crazy. The dad's a psychologist. It's Alan Thicke, and it's typical sitcom, and it's pretty mindless. And John looked at me, and he said, "What's the title?" I said, "Growing Pains." He said, "That's an awful title for a song." He said, "How about As Long as We Got Each Other?" And I said, "Oh, I love that." And he just started writing down a lyric, and he put it in front of me, and boom, done. And it went like this. Show me that smile again. Don't waste another minute on your crying. We're nowhere near the end. The best is ready to begin.
Wow. Well, I'm going to jump ahead to a question because you kind of just were touched upon it. Have there been many songs that say you weren't sure were going to be a hit, or maybe you were sure they were going to be a hit and you ended up being surprised either way?
Several times, both ways. Songs I thought were surefire hits that just never found their time or never found the right artist, and songs that to me were throwaways that I was kind of asked to write for a specific thing that I thought, well, it doesn't matter. This will never see the light of day, and becomes, this monster hit that I'm almost embarrassed to say I wrote. So, so it's happened both ways.
One thing that's also happened, Steve, is you've sustained excellence in this business for a long time. And see if I get the math right. You've charted songs in 5 decades. You've had #1 hits in 4 decades, 4 separate decades.
Right.
What do you attribute that longevity to? How have you been able to keep those creative juices flowing and those windshield wipers and leaves blowing and all that stuff all these years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wish I had the answer. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I wake up, I sleep, eat, and breathe it. And I love this business, and I love the creative process more than anything. And I love being in the studio with great musicians. And my favorite thing is because once you've heard me sing, you'll realize why you never heard me on the radio. And so for me, it was all about getting the great voices to want to sing my material. And I've been extremely blessed. I've been very lucky, and that some of these amazing artists have wanted to sing my songs.
Well, have you ever had a song where when you're in the middle of composing it, a particular artist jumped out to you as, oh, this would be the perfect song for this particular person?
Occasionally, but not often. I tend to just write the song. I don't think about who's going to do it, because invariably whoever I would choose isn't going to be the one that does it. I've been, Kenny Rogers was not the first choice for Through the Years.
Who was?
Barry Manilow and Glenn Campbell both passed on it. Lionel Richie was the one who really found that song and was instrumental in getting Kenny to record it. So you never know. You never know who's going to do them. Song "I Cross My Heart," which ultimately was a big hit for George Strait, out of the movie Pure Country, was 8 years before George did it. Bette Midler recorded it, and so you never know. I Just Fall in Love Again was originally recorded by the Carpenters, and they didn't put it out as a single. And Dusty Springfield, who I idolized, recorded it, same song. She didn't put it out as a single, and then Anne Murray recorded it and had the big hit with it. So
yeah, that was #1 for an entire year, I think, on the country charts, wasn't it? It was like, that was a huge hit.
That was a biggie. That was a big.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Steve, I remember watching the movie Pure Country, and that song, I don't remember a whole lot about. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, but that song has stuck in my head ever since. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah,
Is there an artist that you wish would record one of your songs who hasn't? And I'm sure that's a very small pool because you've had the best of the best.
I have a lot of those, a lot of artists that I still, and every year there's a new voice and but yeah, I mean, I would love to, I love Josh Groban. I would love to work with Josh. I'd love Elvis to cut one, but that not happen. Um, there are some new artists that are great, especially in the country market. Dan and Shay. I haven't. Keith Urban. I'd love to have something with Keith. I admire him a lot. So, yeah, there are always great artists out there that. But I've been very lucky and have had the best of the best do my songs over the years. So I'm pretty satisfied.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say, but before we go on, because I think Rosie might have a question for you coming up next about something else you've written that's not a song. But I just wanted to take a moment, Steve, and say that anyone who visits your website and clicks on discography, and you just scroll and scroll and scroll, and you'll have carpal tunnel by the time you're done scrolling through all those hits and all those artists. It was just absolutely amazing. Like I said before, to sustain that for so long and to still be doing it, just kudos to you for doing it. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot more artists to come that are going to add to that list.
I hope so. Thank you. Yeah, I liken it to, it's really the only thing I know how to do. Both my ex-wives said I couldn't hang a painting on the wall straight. So it's pretty, I stick to what I'm good at.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, because when you do what you're good at, it generally is prosperous and you can pay someone to hang the picture on the wall. So, so let's move on to something else, as Bill said, that you've written that happens to not be a song. What inspires you to write your book? Talk to us about that. And was it different than following the inspiration of songwriting?
Totally different. I never aspired to write a book, first of all, because I didn't think my life was that interesting that people would want to read about it, because I'm not that face of my music. The artists that recorded the songs and made them hits, they're the face of the songs. But I was doing a performance, because I have been doing these evenings with Steve Dorff, where I sit at the piano and I tell the stories, which are fun, and all the audiences love to hear those behind the scene stories, and then I sing the song. And so after one of the shows, I think I was in Danbury, Connecticut, and this woman came over to me afterwards, and I was shaking hands and saying hi to the people and thanking them for coming. And she came over to me and she leaned in and whispered, you really don't sing worth a damn, but I love your story, and you should write a book. And I said, well, I don't really know how to take that. And she said, well, if I get you a book deal, will you write the book? And it turns out she was a literary agent. And 3 or 4 months later, she emailed me and said, I got you a book deal. You better start writing. And so that was the beginning. And then over the course of a year, I started to every night would sit down for 2 or 3 hours and recall some of the fun stories and just write them out. And then they became chapters, and then it evolved into a book, which I happen to have right here.
Excellent.
And it's got all the stories and all the fun stuff, what these artists were all thinking and doing, and some fun times and then some not so fun times. And but it's really a nod to all the great talent that I've gotten to work with, both in the studio and out of the studio. So,
well, Bill, can you guess what your birthday present's going to be?
And it's available on my website, stevedorff.com.
Excellent.
I was going to say, I was getting ready to ask that question, but I had to figure out there what well, you know what? I'm looking forward to that present, actually. That'll be a good one. And I guarantee you, I'll read it. So thank you, Steve, and thank you, Rosie, in advance.
From my website, I will personally sign it. Otherwise, it's available on Amazon, and the audio version is available on Amazon.
Well, that sounds like fun. I
want the signed version there, partner. Just
yeah.
So,
Okay. Okay. You got it. You got it. No problem. I really agree with you that, and we've said this now on a number of shows, that people love to be a part of like kind of the behind the scenes thing. And it's fun because, you know, we only get to see when people come out on stage or when with the finished product. It's fun to be a part of the process.
Well, yeah. And the other thing is most listeners, they'll hear a song on the radio. By the time they hear it on the radio, it's already an established or on its way to being an established hit by an established artist. There's no concept of how long it took from the time that song left my piano to it hearing on the radio. I mean, it's years. I mean, it takes years. It took 6 years for I Just Fall in Love Again to be a hit. It took probably 3 or 4 years for Through the Years to become a hit. 8 years for I Crossed My Heart. I played that song for everyone and my mother, and everybody kind of went, not one of your best. There's no rhyme or reason. You know?
How supportive was your mother and your family with your songwriting? Because lots of times, you know, like say the prophet is not welcomed in his own town so much, you know, everyone else thinks they're great. And then at home, it's like, yeah, you know, what was that like for you?
No, my mom was, loved everything I did. Everything. I was a mama's boy, and my dad, who had left, not so much. He wanted me to, you know, get a real job. The typical, you know, music's a great hobby. Everybody loves music, but you can't make a living in it. So, yeah, they were supportive. They didn't live long enough to see me get inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which is kind of a shame. And in my speech, and my sister passed away a couple months before I was inducted, and so they never really got to see that's the pinnacle, you know, that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for a songwriter, is the Hall of Fame.
What was it like writing that speech compared to writing a song? I mean, what was that experience like, and how did it feel to receive that kind of recognition after all you had done up to that point?
And did you expect it, or were you surprised?
Well, I knew I was being inducted, and I had been given the time to write an acceptance speech, and I knew how it was going to go down. I knew what the segment was. There were 6 of us being inducted, and that night, and they had told us what the segments were, and so I knew what was going to go down. I was not ready for the emotional. It was cataclysmic. I mean, it was the greatest night of my life.
One of tonight's honorees, I'd like to introduce you to an incredible songwriter with a huge heart and one hell of a dad. A 2018 inductee to the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, my father, Steve Dorff.
And I'd especially like to thank and acknowledge the people who are no longer here to be with me tonight. But are very much here in my heart every day. And they would be real proud of this evening. My mom, my dad, my sister, Sherry, Nancy, the mother of my 2 wonderful sons, and most of all, my son, Andrew, who told me so very often that I was his favorite songwriter. And that one day I would be standing here accepting this highest honor.
Well, congratulations on that. And we're sure glad that you didn't listen to your father on music being a hobby and that you really followed your heart. And I think that's probably why you've had the longevity that you've had, because you seem to be someone who, when you get an inspiration and an inclination, you act on it.
Yeah.
And that's really important, that you're not so much attached to the results, but you're really, you're kind of about just the creative process. And
Steve, I'll add one thing to that. I think that for a lot of people that we've met, not just on the show, but people we've met over the years who are in one form or another of the entertainment business, and you usually early on get that lecture about getting a real job or whatever the case may be. And I came up with a saying for those folks that don't support us that want to venture into the creative arts, and that is, do it because of them if you can, in spite of them if you must. But you've got to do what it is you love to do.
Absolutely. And yeah, and I might also say it's the hardest job there is. People think, oh, you sit down at the piano and you goof around and write a song, and it's hard work, and it doesn't pay off 90% of the time. And then there's the creative process, and then there's a whole nother side of the business. That's why they call it the music business, that you have to deal with. How do you get this gem that you've just created and demoed to a Kenny Rogers or to a Whitney Houston? That's a whole nother realm of the game that you have to be really good at.
did you find that you were naturally good at that, or did you have to assemble a team, so to speak, and find people who really believed in what you were doing, who could then take the ball and run with it?
Never had that team. I really didn't. I think that's something innately that you're born with. You part driven, part manifest destiny, which has always been a big component of my career, of my success. You have to almost will things to happen, and you can't wait for the phone to ring. You've got to be ultra proactive and know when to pull back and know when to push forward.
Do you feel that you have made or had to make a lot of sacrifices to be that driven and to manifest your destiny?
Yeah. Yes. That's a good question. I'd have to think about it. I'm going to think about that one for.
Okay.
But, yeah, I've sacrificed quite a bit.
I would think, yeah.
Well, and hopefully on an evening like the one in 2018, those sacrifices, there's a reason why, and then there's a payoff for it. And I had one last kind of related question, Steve, that I wanted to ask, and then we're going to play a little game and maybe show people just how hard it is to write something, especially on the fly.
Or not.
Yeah. But my question is, when you see, whether we talked earlier about the theme from Growing Pains, you also have had music that's been played in a plethora of movies. Again, folks, go to the website and see the movies and television shows that Steve's music's been in. It's amazing. Is there a different feeling that you get when there's a composition that you see on television or on the big screen as compared to when you hear it on the radio? Yeah.
It's funny you asked that. I was laying in bed the other night and I flipping around the channels, and there was this old Columbo movie that I did the music to. And I ended up watching, and I've seen that movie a zillion times when I was doing the music for it, because I'd have to watch every scene and compose the music, the mystery thing, the killer, the cover up, but I watched the whole movie, and then at the end of the movie it said music by Steve Dorff, and I went, man, that's cool. Well, I did that probably, I don't know, 20 something years ago and never even thought about it. And here it is still on TV, and Growing Pains is on, and Murphy Brown's on, and a lot of the movies that I've done the music for. So it is a different feeling, but it's still great to hear a song come on the radio too, when you're in your car and all of a sudden, boom, one of your songs comes on the radio. I mean, it's always, that's the only applause a person like me gets, because I'm not out playing in front of 15,000 people. The applause for me and the gratification for me is when someone's performing it on the radio or on television,
or even in a local bar. I mean, the thing about your music is you have no idea how widespread this net is. Like I said, people are dancing to these songs at weddings, like they're momentous occasions in their life. You have written the soundtrack for many people's lives.
Yeah.
And that's, like, to me, that's incredible. It's such a legacy that you will leave, that will live on and on and on.
I have a funny story. I'll tell you real quick. I was at I can't remember what the event was, and it was a champagne cocktail kind of event, and it was some music business thing, and I was standing talking to a friend of mine, and this woman came over to me, and she said, "You wrote Through the Years, didn't you?" I said, "I did." And she said, "I'm so and so," and I said, "Nice to meet you." She said, "You have no idea what that song means to me." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice." "No, you have no idea, really." And she starts crying. And she says, "My mother, it was her favorite song. She would sing it at the piano every night before she went to bed. And when she passed away, we have engraved the lyric on her tombstone." So at this point, I'm thinking, this is getting a little weird. And as this guy was passing by, the waiter holding a bunch of champagnes, I grabbed two of them. I said, "Here, let's drink to your mom." And it was just kind of a side story when you were talking about what songs mean to different people at different times of their lives. It's not just my songs. It's
Right.
Music transcends people's lives, and where they were when they heard something, and what they were doing when they heard something. So
yeah, and Steve, in that particular story, in that particular case, it's literally etched in stone. I mean, it doesn't get any more powerful than that. Wow.
Well, we're gonna just do one little fun thing before we go. I have this beautiful blue bag, and in it are just a couple of little topics. And we wanted to test, we call this tapping the muse. We wanted to test your songwriting prowess here and see, because you're in front of your piano now, right? You're in the control room of your studio, and to see if you can just whip up a little ditty. Now, do you want one at a time, or do you want me to pick a couple out and weave them in?
who wrote these? Who put them in the bag?
Bill and I.
So you get co-writer credit on that.
Ooh, okay. I'm listen, this would be a dream of a lifetime. Are you kidding? All right.
Yeah, but this is going to be a tall task, I think, with these topics.
Well, yeah, because they're kind of silly, but you know, whatever. All right. So let me know if you want me to pick more than one. The first one is a lazy boy chair. You want another one? Cold pizza. Well, they kind of go together. Let's see. Behind the mask.
Oh, wait. What was the cold pizza one?
Cold pizza.
Just a cold pizza?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating a cold pizza in a lazy boy chair. Don't know if I'll ever get to where I'm going there. Yeah, I'm eating a cold pizza in my lazy bed, in my lazy boy chair. Wondering if I'll ever see you there. Whatever.
That's awesome. And I love your voice. So
Yeah.
I think your literary agent had a minor in psychology and she was using that just to get you to write the book. All right, I'm going to do one more. Red scarf.
Red scarf.
Red scarf.
What's this? What's another one? With the
Oh.
red?
Behind the mask.
and cold beer and behind the mask. He wasn't feeling the red scarf.
Red scarf behind the mask. Getting her to take it off is quite a task. There you go.
That's awesome. That was so much fun. Thank you so much
Hit
for
right there.
being a good sport.
Yeah.
I don't.
And Steve.
What'd you say, Steve?
I don't think you're going to make any royalties off.
No. But before Steve, before Rosie closes us out, I just wanted to say something to you because I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. And as someone who is, a songwriter in a very, very small capacity, writing some things played locally years ago, to have the opportunity to talk with you, a true Hall of Famer in an area that I love since I was little. And I still have little things that I've written lyrics for decades that I have in little folders somewhere. So to get this opportunity to meet you and get to hear those stories has really been quite an honor for me. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
Thank you. This was really fun, and enjoyed talking to you guys. And no, it was fun. It's great.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. And I'm sure all of our viewers have enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. And thank you for all the music you've brought to millions of people through the years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.